Okay, so now that we're in sketch mode, we're going to go ahead and start by creating the triangle. And so I'm going to go back and forth between the original project file and in the model. So here it is. And what we're going to do is we're going to create this triangle just by controlling or modifying two components of this triangle. So you can see here, this triangle is what is known as a right triangle because this corner right here is at a perfect 90-degree angle. So what we're going to do is going to make a triangle with a height of 1. So that's this opposite side here. The adjacent side, we're not going to add a dimension. And in the hypotenuse side, we're not going to add a dimension either. The only thing that we are going to add is this 30-degree angle. And then from there, the program can actually use geometry, trigonometry to figure out the rest of the stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and activate my line tool, and I'm ready to draw. So anywhere on my workspace, I'm going to go ahead and click anywhere to start my first point. So I'm going to click once to place it down, and then I can move my mouse, and then you'll see a line segment follow along. So with the line segment, you can kind of control the length of the line, as well as the angle in which it's rotated from the horizontal or vertical axis, whichever is closer. Okay. So because I'm going to vertical, it's going to measure off of the horizontal axis. So I'm going to type in 1, and to jump back and forth between the dialog boxes, I'm going to press Tab, so it allows me to go back and forth. Okay. If you're only putting down one line and nothing else, you would press Enter to close it up and then finish drawing your lines. However, if you're doing a sequence of lines, my recommendation will be to, instead of press Enter, you're going to go ahead and click a second time to place the end of that length or that line segment. From there, when you move your mouse again, you're going to see that the new line segment follows your mouse. So for this one, I'm going to make it go straight to the left at a 90-degree angle, and I'm not going to concern myself with the length of this line. So I'm just going to go ahead anywhere, just go ahead, click to place a point, and then to finish it up, I'm going to go ahead and connect that third line segment right to where I started, the very first point of my line. So I click to place it, and because it is now a closed shape, you can see that my line tool just stopped on its own. I'm going to go ahead hit escape to cancel my line function, or I could do is right click and then cancel to stop drawing my lines. To make things less cluttered, I'm going to grab this dimension right here and then drag it to the outside of my shape. So it's not inside, which can cause visual crowding. As you can see here, there are two symbols that popped up. These are known as your constraints. This symbol right here, this represents a vertical constraint. What that lets you know is that this line is perfectly vertical, going straight up and down. There's no angle, there's no tilt at all. This symbol right here, which kind of looks like an upside down T, that is the symbol for something that is perpendicular. So perpendicular means that they intersect each other at a 90-degree angle. Yep. Now, all we're going to do now is just add in one more piece of information. And what that will do is going to fully constrain our triangle. It's going to give it all the necessary information needed to create that. So to do that, I'm going to activate my dimension tool. So it's up here in my create category. So it's the last one in that little grouping. What I can also do is I can use the shortcut key D for dimension to activate it. And so all you need to do is pick two things that you're referencing, and then the third click will be to pretty much tell the program where are you putting this new measurement at. So I want to know what the angle is between this line right here and then this line right there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the hypotenuse line and in this bottom line, which I'll call adjacent, there it is. And so as I move my mouse, it's wondering where do I want to place this measurement at. So what I'll do is I'll put it somewhere right here in the middle so it's not too scrunched up in that corner. And it's going to ask me what angle do I want to place it at. So I'm going to set that to 30 degrees. So I just type in 30 and then press enter. If you need to be more precise or in whatever units that you're doing, maybe you're doing something with polar coordinates, you're doing radians, you can just type in and specify what units you're using. And then the program will know what you're trying to do as well as make any necessary conversions of different units. Yep. So there we go. So with that, as soon as I press that angle, you will see that the two lines that don't have the measurements will automatically adjust itself so that it is where it needs to be. Now, what's pretty cool about this program is that it does know a lot of mathematical theory and concepts. So with that, pretty much all this is all the information we need in order to have this rectangle, well, not rectangle, this triangle. What I mean by that is that if I were to add the final angle, like I don't know what this angle is here, if I dimension that, the program will tell me all you're doing is you're adding an extra angle that doesn't really need to be there because we already know what it is. Okay? If you're not aware what the angle is, the sum of any triangle, all the interior angles will always equal to 180 degrees. So we have a 90-degree triangle, a corner, a 30-degree corner, which equals 120. In order to get 180, we would just need 60 degrees. And so that would be this final corner right here. To further demonstrate that, I'm going to grab my dimensioning tool, click on those two sections, and then place a dimension. And again, here is the error message saying, that's too much information. We don't need that. So this will be considered an over-constrained sketch. By adding in a dimension, this is known as a driven dimension. So if I click on create a driven dimension, you'll notice that the number has a parentheses around it. What that means is that I cannot edit this number because it is dependent on something else, that being these other two angles. So if I click on the 30-degree angle and then change that up, say 27, that driven angle will adjust itself accordingly. Yep. Same thing with the two remaining sides of the triangle using Pythagoras theorem as well as sine, cosine, and tangent. It can already figure out what those two sides are. So by adding in a dimension, I get the message saying that I'm over constraining it. I'm adding more dimensions than necessary. Yep. So I'm going to go say I'm going to create that as a driven dimension. And now I'm going to compare that to the original triangle. Here we go. So again, we didn't do any calculations. We didn't do any measurements or anything like that. But that bottom side ends up being 1.732. And the one that we just created is also 1.732. So identical triangles. With that, the first sketch is completed. I'm going to do now is go ahead and click to finish my sketch. And then in my project browser, every time I do a new sketch, you're going to see the sketch folder. It gets populated with all those different drawings. So kind of think of it, every time you start a sketch, it's like adding a new piece of paper to your drawings. What I'll do is I'll rename this just for convenience sake so that, when I need to do any modifications or edits later on, instead of kind of like going through and trying to figure out which one's the correct shape, by giving it a name I can identify easier, it'll make my life less complicated. So I'll call this triangle. Yep. And that pretty much is the first sketch of exercise one.